The wedding was supposed to be quiet and secret, a fresh start, a celebration of new love. But Papoose and Claressa's secret ceremony was anything but peaceful. Instead, it turned into a public spectacle that everyone who saw the widely circulated videos or went to the event will never forget. The whole affair was appended when Remy Ma walked in amid the whispered secrets, flowers, and promises. She didn't just attend the wedding, she went crazy. Papoose was recognized for being Remy Ma's ride-or-die and reliable husband. They had endured a lot in their relationship, including conflict, notoriety, and jail time. As a result, fans were shocked to learn that he was dating rising boxing phenom Claressa Shields, according to allegations that surfaced on blogs and fan sites. Some thought it was a prank. Others thought it might have anything to do with business. Papoose was on his way, though, as rumors were validated when paparazzi captured secret dinners, matching outfits, and finally a leaked invitation to a private union. He was getting married in addition to moving on. The invite list was extremely limited, and only VIPs and close friends could attend. Even though phones were forbidden, someone usually finds a way to record. The scene was elegant, almost too elegant for a story that would soon become a haphazard urban legend. Papoose stood at the altar in a white outfit. Claressa, wearing a gorgeous gown with a transparent veil, looked wonderful as she descended the marble stairs. When the music started to rise and the officiant asked if anyone had any objections, no one knew what would happen. Both doors flew open. People gasped. Cameras started to record despite their concealment. She was present. For both fighting and sorrow, Remy wore all black. She didn't shout, she held back her tears. She walked with the elegance of a queen and the fury of a hurricane. The room became chilly. Claressa showed signs of shock. Papoose's jaw dropped. The officiant stepped back unsteadily. There was the sound of a pin falling. Then something was uttered by Remy. Her voice was quiet, but it sliced through the tension. As she said, "Do people really think this is love? You think you can give up over 10 years for a couple of pillow talks and workouts?" No one had the courage to move. Some attendees, especially the few influencers there, were unable to turn away, but others tried. The wedding was no longer the same. There was an altercation. Remy marched forward, heading straight toward Claressa instead of Papoose. The silence became intolerable. "I gave him everything, dedication, years, a legacy, and now you stand here like you earned it." Despite her obvious fear, Claressa tried to keep her composure. "I didn't take anything. He no longer tolerates you." Remy narrowed his gaze. That's when it all exploded. When security showed up, it was already too late. Remy grabbed Claressa's veil before grabbing the wig. Screams were heard. Everyone stood. Phones that had been hidden were now exposed. This would not be a secret moment. The camera flashes highlighted the dispute like fireworks. Papoose stood still, caught between trying to defuse the situation and admitting that there was no going back. Remy took the microphone from the officiant and surveyed the audience. "Since you all like secrets, let's share some. What about those? Hotel receipts from Miami. The ones from when we were married, you know?" Claressa flung herself in her direction. A full-fledged fight broke out. The clothes, shoes, and hair all flew everywhere. Security finally separated them, but the damage was already done. The wedding was over. A public soap opera had been created. Out of their attempt to compose a love story, by the time the films went viral on social media, they were trending all over the world. The hashtags, #Remy Ma, #PAPOOSE drama, and #wedding clash attracted thousands of reposts. They quarreled about who was right. Some say that Remy lost her fury. Others defended her, claiming that betrayal has consequences. The number of memes was enormous. The scene was replicated by TikTokers within a few hours. As news organizations tried to get statements, none of the parties spoke. But behind the scenes, more was being revealed. Closed sources leaked more receipts. Claressa apparently texted Papoose as he was still posting a lot of anniversary tributes to Remy. Screenshots of Remy confronting him face-to-face weeks before the wedding. Even a voice message purportedly from Remy begged him not to make her feel inferior and threatened to break her silence if he made their split public. It turns out that Remy knew about the wedding weeks in advance. This was why she was ready. Her expression wasn't a coincidence, it was a declaration. She wanted everyone to see her suffering, even if she had been portrayed as the villain before. Fans started to wonder if it was a marketing stunt, or did one of hip-hop's most well-known couples actually break up? When the dust settled, the questions kept coming in. How come Papoose moved on so fast? How close was his relationship with Claressa? Was she really surprised? Or did Remy leave before anything ever began? The timelines did not coincide. Rumors kept going around. Remy was not active on social media for some days. Then suddenly she posted a single story on social media. A blank screen with the clear statement, "Betrayal never cuts as deeply as truth." She went on talking, and it's clear that if people thought she would walk away amicably, they forgot who she was. In the interval, Papoose made an effort to maintain his reputation, but every public move he made was met with condemnation. Even Claressa, who was praised for breaking down barriers in boxing and being a powerful black woman, began to receive hate messages online. Her comment sections were inundated with people. The wedding photos they tried to post, a proportion. The romantic tale lacked plausibility. They wanted to know. Behind the scenes, Claressa's public relations team hurried. She canceled 2 appearances. One of her endorsement deals allegedly stopped promotions. She wasn't prepared for the storm of loss when she fought outside of the ring. But Remy wasn't finished. She already knew what she was going to do next. According to industry sources, she had more to say. An interview with a podcast, an open interview. Maybe a diss track. Whatever it was on its way. It was also going to be a strong blow. Because Remy Ma is not just a respondent. She retaliates. And this was just the beginning. Papoose stood in stunned silence, his hands tightly clasped at his sides, unable to process the madness that was unfolding before him. Just minutes earlier, he had believed that this intimate rite might bring him peace, even a strange kind of closure. But what had started out as a reconciliation attempt had turned into a total disaster. Whispers of astonishment and gasps from people too scared to stop it had replaced the soothing music that had once filled the courtyard. Claressa staggered back, still stunned by Remy Ma's strike, palm flying to her scalp. The remnants of her formerly immaculately styled wig now dangled from Remy's hand like a prize. Everyone in the audience gasped, and someone yelled. Someone stopped them, but nobody has moved yet. The stress was so great that everyone was immobilized. Remy didn't flinch, even though her breathing was labored and her chest was rising and falling. In rage, she made fun of Claressa, who had finally regained her balance by raising the wig high. "You thought you could take everything from me and look innocent as you went?" Remy's voice cracked with anger and grief. "You really thought that I would be forgotten and you would be in white at the end of this?" 2 security guards finally rushed, grabbed her arms, and pulled her back as she lunged at Remy. The whole time, the cameras, because, of course, there were cameras, were rolling. Out of sight of the couple who planned to turn this wedding into a redemption story. For a documentary, but the irony was that it had changed completely. Papoose, however, had said nothing, his eyes focused on Remy, who was more than just his wife. The person he had publicly stood by when everything seemed to be against her. But even he had to admit that he hardly recognized this betrayed and humiliated version of her. Remy dropped the wig at her feet and walked slowly toward Papoose, her heels clicking on the marble surfaces like warning bullets. "What?" When she asked him, her eyes were blurry. "Blurry after everything? Are you going?" "To marry her right here." Papoose swallowed forcefully. He started to say something, but the words became stuck in his throat. Still restrained by security, Claressa yelled, "Pap, tell her the truth. Inform her of the length of time you and I have been together." The crowd exploded. Numerous phones that were still out were recording every second of this heated discussion. Others were trying to leave in silence, afraid of what might come next. In the middle of it all, Remy Ma was waiting. Not for the crowd or the cameras, but for him. At last, Papoose made a statement. Remy's jaw tensed. "Remy, I didn't expect things to turn out this way." His voice shook, heavy with regret. "But after everything, you changed. Both of us did." He shot back, "You dare not put it on me." "I'm not," he said, "but you've been so distant, Rem. I tried to make things better." Now, in silence, Remy's face was weeping. But not for Papoose or Claressa, but for herself, for the sacrifices she made. The years she devoted herself to, and the loyalty she provided. And this was her reward. Her reward. Claressa, now free of the guards, stepped forward once more and said, "You know he was going to ask me to marry him today. In the spotlight, you ruined it too." Remy wiped at her face and turned to her gently. "I didn't do any harm. You all humiliated me in public the minute you felt like it." The room was silent again. The tension had altered. Papoose realized that there was no easy answer, that his choice would break someone, and that maybe, just maybe, it was too late for them all. Then police sirens sounded and everything stopped. It seems that the instant things got physical, someone called the police, and all of a sudden, the night was filled with flashing red and blue lights, like a crime scene. Officers rushed past the guests, demanding order. One of the officers approached Remy Ma, saying, "You're being held for assault, ma'am." There were gasps, and Remy's mouth dropped open. "You must be kidding with me." "No, ma'am," the officer replied. "Everything is on camera. You can explain everything at the station." Claressa smiled happily. "I said I would have the last say." But she was not going to get that satisfaction from Remy. As the officers began to lead her away, she turned to look at Papoose, who was standing still in contemplation. "I loved you," she replied in a low voice that sounded as if she had lost all strength. "And I would have stood up for you. But you handed me over to the enemy." Papoose was speechless and motionless. He just stood there, his eyes wide, his lips pressed into a thin line. Claressa laid a hand on his shoulder. "Leave her alone. We all made our own decisions." But her words seemed hollow, and the crowd slowly began to thin out as Remy Ma was led away. The once magical wedding scene had become a battle zone, with ripped flowers, broken champagne glasses, and a path of mayhem left in the wake of one of hip-hop's most dramatic love triangles. Claressa tried to carry on the ceremony once she was back inside the estate, but the guests had had enough and the magic had disappeared. What about Papoose? He stood alone under the vows arch, staring into the darkness, and he felt a wave of regret. It wasn't supposed to end this way. But the line between loyalty and treachery is very thin in this world. And occasionally, there's no turning back once you've crossed it. The sun had long since set, and the once bright glow of the hidden wedding location had faded into a chilly, uncomfortable calm. With some flickering candles still burning, their flames quivering in the wind as though they were simulating the mayhem that had just happened. Remy Ma was gone, a queen deposed in public, taken out in handcuffs. And all that was left were the remnants of what was supposed to be Papoose's fresh start. He remained motionless beneath the wedding arch, and the white petals scattered across the floor now looked like ashes, symbols of a love story that had turned to dust. The guests had left, the producers had packed up their equipment, and even the police had driven away. But Papoose remained motionless, his mind replaying every second. The slap, the wig, the shouting, the betrayal. Claressa returned to the room, her face still red with embarrassment and anger. He slowly turned his head toward her, his eyes unfocused, his voice far away. "Pap," she murmured softly, "you can't just stand here forever. We still have a future, F. We want it, do we?" Claressa hesitated, taken aback. "What are you?" saying. He moved away from the altar and slowly brushed by her. "You organized the entire event as though it were a show. You intended for it to be a show. That isn't love." Claressa sneered, her defensive barriers rising. "That's control. So I'm to blame now." She entered like a raging storm. "She made us both seem bad." "No," he murmured quietly as he turned to look at her. "You were humiliated by her." Even more devastating than any slap Remy could have delivered were those words. "I was already broken before she walked in." Claressa's expression grew stern. Papoose said, "I don't know, but I can't go forward with this. Not like this. Not with you." "So, what are you going back to her?" The wedding was over, the fantasy was shattered, and hours later, Remy Ma sat alone in a small holding cell, her arms folded tightly across her chest. The adrenaline had worn off, replaced by exhaustion and disbelief. A female officer had handed her a cup of water earlier, but she hadn't touched it. She kept thinking about the look on Papoose's face, the hurt, the silence, the betrayal. Was it worth it? That was the question that plagued her. Her heart skipped a beat when she heard a buzzer and a voice say, "Reminisce, Mackie, you've made bail." She didn't regret defending herself. But perhaps she had allowed the fire inside her to burn too hot, scorching everything in her path, including the man she loved. As she was let out, she noticed that Fat Joe was waiting for her in the lobby. He opened his arms and said, "You really had to go full Bronx on M, huh?" Remy couldn't help but laugh a little, even as tears filled her eyes. Grateful to see a familiar face, she rushed into his arms and whispered, "I messed everything up, Joey." He pulled away and held her shoulders, saying, "No, you defended yourself. That's who you are. But now you have to decide who you are. Want to be moving forward?" Meanwhile, Papoose sat alone in a hotel room he had reserved for what was supposed to be the honeymoon. The silence was unbearable, and he browsed through his phone, each app displaying footage of the catastrophe. He turned it all off and threw the phone aside, realizing that he had lost his compass somewhere along the line, and that, in trying to find solace with Claressa, he had abandoned the one person who had been there for him through thick and thin. Remy had her flaws, of course, but hadn't they both? By the next morning, the world was divided into factions, with some supporting Remy and hailing her as a woman scorned, who refused to be disrespected, while others mocked her and called her bitter and washed up. Claressa attempted to turn the tide in her favor with a tearful Instagram live, portraying herself as the real victim, but it wasn't working. Realizing that the storm wouldn't go away on its own, Papoose decided to speak up. That afternoon, he posted a video to his followers in which he sat in a dark room with only one light overhead and said, "I owe everyone an explanation, but more importantly, I owe Remy an apology. Not for what happened last night, but for everything that led up to it." He paused, saying, "I thought I could move on. I thought love was about comfort and convenience. But love is about loyalty." The video went viral right away. Remy watched it in silence, tears silently tracing lines down her cheeks. She had no idea what would happen next, or even whether reconciliation was possible. But for the first time in a long time, she felt seen. A few days later, the media circus subsided, and Papoose arrived at Remy's house without any cameras or a script. "What do you want, Pap?" "To talk," he said simply. "To be real." Remy studied him for a long moment before moving aside. And suddenly they were talking, not as celebrities, not as scandal headlines, but as two people who had been through hell and perhaps, just possibly, still had a little heaven left to fight for. Because love in the spotlight is cruel, but sometimes the biggest victories come after the darkest falls. It was just him and a lot of apologies. She opened the door slowly, folding her arms, and she folded her arms. "We've seen the secret weddings. the fights and the viral tears, but the fallout is just getting started. If you were left speechless by this wild roller coaster of love, betrayal, and public breakdowns, don't worry, this story is far from over. What happens next with Remy Ma, Claressa, and Papoose could completely upend the plot. We've seen the secret weddings, the fights, and the viral tears, but the fallout is just getting started. Your support helps us delve deeper, break the hottest stories first, and bring you the real tea without the sugar coating. If you're feeling brave, leave a comment below. Who's really to blame in all of this? Team Remy? Team Claressa? Or is Papoose just caught in the crossfire? Trust me, you won't want to miss what we're dropping next. Is only the beginning. And it's going to become a lot messier. Stay loud and tuned in. Continue to be legendary.